Welcome to Making the Cut with Marcus Washington. I am your host tonight, and we have a busy show. Of course, we are in the heart of football season, so definitely we'll be talking a lot of football, both college and the NFL tonight. But college football was in one of these weeks where if ESPN was still kind of pumping things up like they used to pump things up, they would have called it Judgment Day. They usually had some sort of like kind of this goofy moniker that would go when they wanted to hype up a particular weekend. This past weekend, we had four different games that matched teams in the top 25 going up against each other. It was kind of one of those weekends where you could kind of start seeing teams kind of differentiate themselves from the rest of the pack, and we did see that in big ways in one of the four games, but a little bit in smaller ways in the other three games that day. So Saturday was a very exciting day, and then of course Sunday with football we saw a lot of good action. We also saw some blowouts that left us with some questions. Certainly there are some questions in some cities of what they're going to do. Places like Indianapolis and other places where teams suffered. Kind of losses. Not that I unexpected. I did actually pick Jacksonville this week, but kind of unexpected losses that might set the franchise back. A team like Kansas City, I don't think anyone was shocked that they lost. I think it's the way that they lost that shocked a lot of people. So we'll get into the NFL a little bit later, but we want to start off with college football. And again, like I said, there was four big time games, and certainly we're going to take a look at all four. So for those who listen to the show, even for those who will be joining us for the first time, I do not do this alone. I have my man Brandon Blake on the line. Brandon, how you doing today, buddy?
Well, I'm doing all right. How about yourself on that?
I'm doing great. We want to start off with Friday night in a game that I was woefully incorrect about. With Washington and Stanford, UW goes out there, has a big time home game on a Friday night, and this is one of these times. I know that we're not used to watching college football on Friday night. If it is college football on Friday night, a lot of the time it's some teams from smaller conferences, but I think the Pac-12 have seen a Friday night kind of opportunity, and they put on one of their signature games, this big time game. Now I do know before the season we probably did not know how important this game was going to be, but Washington lines up against Stanford. If you look at David Shaw's record against ranked teams, it is incredibly good for all of the criticism he takes. Um, a lot of it's unwarranted, but he's always been good against ranked opponents. This game, they look woefully unprepared. Washington came out with a jump in their step and intensity. They dominated both sides of the ball in the trenches, which is what surprised me. Stanford is known to be this very physical team. So you would think, okay, even if UW does win at home, which shouldn't shock anyone, big game at home Friday night. You have a national audience since you're not competing against some of the other big games on Saturday. You think that it would be close, but 44-6, the Huskies run the Cardinal, and they held Stanford's Heisman Trophy hopeful McCaffrey. I was going to call him Ed McCaffrey, which obviously is his dad, but they held McCaffrey 12 carries, 49 yards, and then they showed off a little bit of offense. Jake Browning, the quarterback, 15 to 21, 210 yards, three touchdown passes. Miles Gaskin, the running back, 18 carries, 100 yards. And I'm telling you, Sam Wuching on defense with five solo tackles and three sacks. I know Stanford had a little bit of an excuse. They played without both starting cornerbacks and Quentin Meeks and Elijah Holder. I know Frank Owusu was out, their starting wide receiver, and the fullback Daniel Marks, but it was still no excuse to get woodshed on the road to Washington. Blake, what do you think about that one?
Well, I think I was surprised more so by how Washington did it. Washington defeated Stanford. You nailed it. I'd go on further and say that Washington out Stanford in terms of just they beat them. They beat them on both sides of the ball, all on the lines, offensively and defensively. I think I came away impressed with the Jake Browning kid. his performance. I'll be frank and admit, don't catch a whole lot of Stanford games. I wasn't really sold on Washington going into the season. I said that Chris Peterson, who did a great job at Boise State, getting the most out of what he could out of there. I figured Washington, still Stanford and Oregon's on the Pac-12 North, it's still Stanford and Oregon's side of the Pac-12. I figured Washington was at their second, third best team, but they just played so well, especially getting to on Washington on the defensive side of the ball, really disrupting what Stanford wanted to do. Stanford has an issue, I think, offensively, and you kind of nailed it on some point. Yeah, they were out Olusu, their starting receiver. They were down two starting corners. All that being said, Stanford has an issue at the quarterback position. Their starter, Burns, really, one of the starters, they're rotating quarterbacks, basically. In this instance, the old saying, you're going to have two quarterbacks, you're going to have none. I kind of disagree with that, but in this instance, if you're rotating quarterbacks, and still getting the same outcome, there usually no rhythm. So Stanford has a big issue with the quarterback position, I think, and just Washington just took it to them again. Not surprised. I mean, I'm just surprised at how Washington just basically just bludgeoned Stanford on Friday night.
Yeah, they definitely suffocated them. Stanford just couldn't get anything rolling on any side of the ball. There was no cohesion. You could see they were trying to do stuff different. They couldn't do anything different. They couldn't unplug McCaffrey. And I thought that Washington did a great job against them. And look, McCaffrey knows that everyone's going to key on him, especially like you said with the quarterback situation, week after week after week. Yes, he'll probably run for 300 yards against Notre Dame because Notre Dame's defense is awful, and because that will be a signature game. This is a 7:30 game at night with a national audience. People will throw him back into the Heisman race, but right now I think he has a long way to go to get back in it. And I know Ed, his dad, was very, very upset that Christian didn't get it last year, and I hate to tell him, at this point in the season, it doesn't look like he's going to get it this year either. But we'll move on to one of the afternoon games on Saturday afternoon, and that's Michigan and Wisconsin, which looked like someone had dug Bo Schembechler up and brought back old Big Ten football in this 14-7 game. I thought it was Schembechler, and somehow Alvarez came back onto the sideline also. This is another one of these games where I thought that Michigan would win a little bit more ease. I know that Wisconsin has a front seven that's the devil to deal with. There's no doubt about it. One thing that kind of came up in my head that might bite Michigan down the road, Michigan was 0 for 3 on field goals. And people will forget about those things because you kind of like won anyway. But that is something that in a game like, let's just say Ohio State, that you probably will not have the leeway of doing. So that's something that that they're going to have to take care of. But what I will say about Michigan in this game, we heard all week about the Wisconsin defense and how great they were, how awesome that front seven is. And look, they have nothing to be ashamed of how they played, obviously, in that game. But there was no talk about Michigan's defense, and Michigan's defense held Wisconsin to 159 total yards. They completely controlled that game. They had the spectacular interception at the end that I think everyone saw the highlight about a million times. Going into the fourth, that is a tight game.
It was an incredible highlight.
Yeah, it is an incredible highlight. Going into the fourth, it was a tight game, and midway through the fourth, Michigan breaks the tie with Spite to Darboh for 46 yards for a touchdown. Michigan didn't do anything to hurt themselves. I think the pollsters will really respect this win, despite how close it is, despite with the field goals. What did you come away thinking of Michigan? And also, what did you come away thinking of Wisconsin?
Well, I think with Michigan, I think they have a ways to go. I think, to me, in terms of offensively, I believe. Still think they're trying to figure themselves out. I think offensively, the quarterback from Michigan State, you did go 20 for 32 for 219, did throw a TD, but did throw an interception. Was kind of shaky to me. It was throwback football. The score, the game, everything sort of indicated that was. If you were watching the game in when you watch and look at the score, you know, it was 2016 or 1986. Just what the outcome is, just good defensive contest there. That's how I feel about Michigan. I think they're still a ways away. And I know Michigan was the darling, to be one of the 4 playoff teams. I don't see it. I see them getting tripped up along the way. Probably more likely to be Ohio State. Maybe they get another loss or two. I still think they got a lot of work to sort themselves out. I'm more impressed by I'm still more impressed more so by Wisconsin. I know they lost the game, but here we are, a month into the season, and this Wisconsin defense, I think personally it can get better. And keep in mind, they lost their defensive coordinator from last year. Dave Aranda jumped from Wisconsin to LSU. He's the LSU's defensive coordinator, and everybody expected some type of drop-off. And everybody's still waiting for the drop-off.
Yeah.
I think with Wisconsin, and the thing is Wisconsin I'm so impressed with is unlike teams in the SEC or the ACC or the Pac-12 or even the Big 12. Well, let's say back up with Big 12 because they hardly play defense. But especially with the ACC and SEC and Pac-12, they're able to have defenses that are just athletes on there. If you really sit and think about it. But with Wisconsin, you don't have a whole lot of athletes in the sense of there's not a guy on that team that you sort of jumps you and say, oh, wow, person X plays great defense. You could say that at other schools, except the Big 12. But Wisconsin doesn't have that. And I think they just play good, sound defense. And, I know they took the loss to Michigan. They got Ohio State. I think they got 2 weeks in the break for Ohio State. And I think that, looking at that, is like, Ohio State's going to have a fight on their hands. But, assuming that, I could see a scenario where Wisconsin could face either Michigan or Ohio State, or Michigan or Ohio State at least in the Big Ten title game. Now, the one hard game they got on their schedule is they get Nebraska at the end of the month, which Nebraska is pretty good. That could decide. Nebraska and Wisconsin could decide the Big 12, Big 10 West.
Yep.
But the schedule is very doable. I mean, Ohio State, they probably take the loss there. They're at Iowa. A lot of those are 50-50, but I think they got winnable games. Northwestern, Illinois, Purdue, Minnesota to close out the year. So I think if they win their Western games, I think Wisconsin could punch their ticket to get to Indianapolis for the Big Ten title game. So I came away very impressed with Wisconsin despite the loss.
Nice. Yes, no doubt about it. 14-7, nothing to be ashamed of. When we come back, we're up against a break. When we come back, we're going to get to the two games that I think people will say were the more entertaining two of Saturday. We're going to get to Tennessee, Georgia, and Clemson, Louisville. When we get back here, you're listening to Making the Cut.
Without much further ado, I give you
WBLZ Sports. We got balls.
Hey, do you love sports? Do you love pop culture? Do you like to talk about gossip and dirty laundry? Like you do with your friends when you're kicking back watching a game, at the bar, at home, just hanging out. That's exactly what you get when you listen to Sports Infusion. You get the world of pop culture and sports infused together on WBLZ every Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm your host, Pamela Michelle. Join me in the Sports Infusion gang as we bring you the best of both worlds. Why? We can say whatever we want on WBLZ because we've got balls.
Doug Peffer Painting and Pressure Washing. He has over 30 years of painting experience. He's interior, exterior, commercial, or residential. Doug Peffer covers it all. Is your house looking ugh? We'll call on Doug. Doug Peffer Painting